Hello, everybody, and welcome to AV Plus, the podcast for the commercial AV integration industry. My name is Dan Farisi, and I am editor-in-chief of Commercial Integrator, and I'm really excited to welcome this week Chris Neto, who is Market Development Manager for Starin, a Midwich company, who is also, as you know, the impresario of AV in the AM. Can't wait to share this conversation with you. Thank you for coming.
As always, please like and subscribe to our YouTube page, and please subscribe to the AV Plus podcast on Apple and on Spotify.
So happy to be joined today by Chris Neto, Market Development Manager with Starin, a Midwich company. He's also, of course, a social media influencer, AV in the AM, all over AV Tweeps world. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris.
That's quite the intro, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So let's talk about how integrators can run their businesses better in the context of what you're kind of a specialist in, which is marketing and branding. You know, these days, integrators can certainly win business through their technical competency, their track record of success. But can you help explain the importance of working to market yourself and your company? Why is it important to create a personal or company-wide brand? Why isn't it just about technical competency?
Sure. Well, I mean, you pride yourself on technical competency. You're an integrator, right? You can go ahead and build these great, awesome systems, whether they be, a UC platform type system for a company worldwide, or it could be some projector mapping type setup. We take a lot of pride in our work and our creativity, right? But one of the things that we don't do very well is highlight the people in the places in our own workplace that are doing some of this work. I think social media does that. I think social media can help the integrator in basically turbocharging their marketing, right? The marketing plans are typically made by marketing folks who have a whole big integrated marketing plan that involves email and print and trade shows. That's all part of a bigger overall conversation, but your engagement to your end users, engagement with your manufacturers, what is the glue that can connect all this? And that's where social media steps in. And as a person within a company, because I work for Starin, within Starin, my role as a market development manager is, develop markets, right? So it's across the industry. I go looking for places where I think AV fits and how we can help. And it's also a marketing and a sales kind of component to it. But within the group itself I have the ability to help internally our staff, how to personalize a message, right? And how to take a little piece of who they are and help bring that out to the public, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that is working with our sales team, whether that's with our head of sales, let's go ahead and truly show who we are. And social media is a great place to do that because it's the engagement, the engagement platform for a marketing component. It's not marketing. Do not confuse the two, because there are people that go to school for marketing and they have their ways of doing things with email marketing, Salesforce, and SAP, and all this other stuff. And they can definitely go into a whole. There's probably a multiple series there. Social media is different. Social media is engaging with your audience, and that audience can be end users. It can be your technical staff, internal, external, other companies, with your manufacturer partners, so on and so forth.
So let's talk about social media, since we've kind of broached that subject at this point. If a company and its associates haven't really done a whole lot on social media or the internet, apart from, building a website and maybe generating some sparsely populated social media handles, would you suggest a checklist of sorts to get them up to speed and ready to market and brand themselves online, or at least create presences for themselves that are robust in the social media sphere? If they have 47 followers, they created it 8 years ago, what would you suggest as a checklist of things to do?
Well, so followers are great and followers are awesome. You can have followers on your own personal, Twitter and LinkedIn and connections that you have on TikTok or Instagram or wherever you are doing for your own personal stuff. First thing you got to do is you have to find out, as as a company, I guess, and if you want to start developing this kind of conversation, you need to find out who's going to separate business from professional or who wants to blend the two, right? I'm unique in the sense that I can blend the two, right? My personal stuff doesn't is personal, but it's personal with an AV twist, right? It's funny because a lot of my family will see some of my posts on like Instagram. I'm like, dude, what is it that you do? Because today it's microphones, tomorrow it's pizza, the next day it's a picture of your dog, the next day it's, you're traveling and you're going to a technology trade show. I'm like, that's how I choose to do my Instagram, but it's also how I choose to do my social media. So if you are, sitting down with people at your company, first of all, take a straw poll. Who wants to do this, right? Who has the ability to mix the two, and can you do it responsibly? Right? Can you post a picture of what you had, for breakfast, and then the next picture, can it be, what you're working on, right? And keeping in mind privacy, right? You don't want to let out, maybe you don't want to let out what the company is, or maybe you don't want to focus on the brands that you're using because the brands, for some reason you don't want to show that. So, how do you do that? I think it's all starts with sitting down with your folks and saying who wants to get into social media, because one of the things that I've learned over trying to force feed social media to people is that not everybody has their their head in it. Not everybody's really big on it. Nobody wants to. It's, for lack of a better term, Dan, it takes a lot of time, right, out of my own
Mhm.
personal schedule, right? I do things on Sundays and I do things 24/7. That is by choice, right? And the reason why I do that by choice is maybe because this is what I've decided to do as part of my career and integrate this into my life.
Mhm.
Most companies don't need to do that. They need to to handpick a few people in there that are willing to share, right? Because that's what you're doing. If you're an introvert, maybe you can do this. I'm not saying introvert versus extrovert. There's a better possibility. If you're introvert and you don't want to talk to anybody, maybe you want to share the stuff that you're doing. Maybe it's the fact that you want to be able to show cables and connectors that you built in your space. If
Mhm.
you are, obviously, if you work inside a shop or a rack, maybe you want to show people how to properly solder things, or what's the best way to wire up a rack so that, the power and the audio are separated and there's no crossing of those things. There's 100 different ways of where you can take social media. It's up to people to be creative in how they want to do it, and finding people that are really kind of, masters of their craft, that they really have no problem showing that, hey, listen, nobody can wire up an equipment rack as quickly or as cleanly or as neatly as I do. There's entire Facebook groups, dedicated to people with wiring capability, where they color code the racks in such a way and bundle the wire so cool that they get thousands and thousands of likes. So there is a place for everybody. It's just a matter of sitting and speaking with your staff and seeing who's ready to take that step and go on this journey.
So that's really kind of the threshold moment, finding who on the staff is willing to do this, is able to work this into his or her workflow, and then find something that's going to resonate with him or her, where they're going to be able to expound on their own brand or the company's brand, the integration firm's brand, and do it with a regularity where it's not going to be a chore, it's not going to feel tedious, but they actually can kind of sink their teeth into it.
Correct. And the marketing folks, what they need to do is step in to help people, because not everybody's going to be, and I'm going to say this word and it probably repeats over and over again in a lot of this conversation, especially when you're talking about social media, using storytelling, right? Not everybody's a good storyteller, right? Historians have always been good storytellers. Going back to, I mean, I was a history minor in college, right? And how were written records kept and how people told stories. If you were the storyteller in a group or in a tribe or in a community, you caught attention, you got their attention, and you knew how to tell the story that it would be remembered, right? Storytelling is an integral part of marketing these days, especially on the social side. So you may be good at, say, making, say it is, mounting a television to the wall. There's not
Mhm.
a lot of interesting stuff that comes with it, but how you tell that story, how you chose the bolts, how you set it up, how you lay out your equipment before you even start, how you diagram and measure the space, right? How do you envision it to be? How you selected the mount, right? Why is this television or this display the right one for? There's a whole story behind this. You can take a quick 30-second video and deliver a chapter's worth of information just by telling it correctly in a story. So marketing is not going to be, your enemy. Marketing is your best friend, especially if you are not a storyteller. So there's a way to kind of storyboard this and take even a 30-second video clip and make it, something that will strike a note with the audience.
Right. So, when I introduced you, you're a very humble person. You don't promote yourself. What you do, I think, is try to help the industry and generate conversations. So for social media influencers, aspiring social media influencers, companies that want to make their firms part of the social media influencer sphere, would you say there are any pitfalls that you can say you should try to avoid this because it's not gonna help you in your journey? Are there common mistakes that people make that you can kind of say avoid those traps and it's going to get you down the road a bit faster?
Absolutely, and I appreciate. I mean, you realize that I do come humble, and it's kind of weird because I am so out there, but yet I kind of pull back and don't like to take credit for certain things because it's kind of not who I am. But I there are definitely some pitfalls. A couple things that I've noticed over the years, and I've been doing this for about 10 years in the public space or in the industry, right? People that come out really aggressive. If the plan was to come out and bombard people with overposts, you're definitely going to burn yourself out. And you're also going to come out a little too hard, and it may distract. It'll make your audience wonder what's going on. Well, look, you can definitely smell a marketing plan coming from a mile away. If all of a sudden it's 5 posts a day, all different, posts, and there's always a marketing twist to it. I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls is when it's a blatant, in your face social media from nowhere, right?
Mhm.
So it you got to build it up slow, and there's ways to do it. Another pitfall is having a 90-day or 60-day plan. As great as, yes, we do have a plan, we're going to get on social, we're going to do it. I believe that there should be a plan. But there are people that will take it to 60 days and then it falls off a cliff and it's done. They gave it a 60-day try. It didn't work in their book, in their eyes, right? And gave up. Many Twitter handles sit empty there from, not knowing what to do. So I think there needs to be a concerted effort that this is not a short form of marketing. This is definitely the long game. You're building an audience. It's your audience. You're not tapping into anything that's out there. You are going to build the trust and give people something that they want to follow you for, right? If you're going to continue doing ad after ad after ad after ad, that's not going to work. What interesting stuff can you do? Some of the things you can look into is, highlighting the equipment, but not in a marketing perspective, right?
Mhm.
Why did you buy this amplifier? Why did you like this speaker? What makes this display look good? Highlight those things. Even better, highlight your team. I know it sounds bizarre because in the world of AV, you know who the CEO is and maybe your salesperson. That's it. Highlight the people that are behind the curtain, right? Who are the people that make the everyday work, right? Project managers are so important to the overall process of how a project or how an installation goes. Highlight your project manager. Have a project manager of the week, right? Or just highlight them for being with the company for 5, 10 years or 2 years, right? I think using social media as an HR kind of uh, uh, plan, not just for hiring. Hey, we're jobs, job wanted, we're hiring. But I think the more you highlight your employees and now you're making them part of the team, I think that also helps twofold, threefold, because you're highlighting that you not only have specialists, that you're proud of the people that you have on your team, right? Imagine all we do is, you're an executive for the NFL and the only person that you highlight on your team is Pat Mahomes. There's a whole team of Pro Bowlers there that you can tap into. Look at the offensive line, look at the defensive line. That's why NFL is a great storytellers. They highlight all these guys who are in the trenches and bring them out. Next thing you know, people are wearing their jerseys, right? We've discussed this, and I will say this, and it's probably one of the most, one of those things that when I speak in front of people about social media, I constantly get giggles. I look to a organization like the World Wrestling Entertainment, former WWF or the WWE. And I look at them as a marketing as a marketing layout, with the WWE sitting atop. And then within that, they have 2 brands or 3 brands when they have the Raw and SmackDown and the NXT. Below that, you can add every single pay-per-view as its own brand underneath that. And all feeding into this is every individual person underneath that. So think of, Julie in accounting. Maybe she is the Undertaker, right? How do you highlight somebody who has been at that job for 20 years and is an integral part of how your day-to-day goes? It's not about anything else other than giving some credit where credit's due. And it's putting faces to the people that typically are just on the other end of the phone answering, right? But they're such an integral part to how the job goes. So use social media to highlight that. Similar to, like I just said, with the whole wrestling thing. It's not just a brand. If you're Integrator XYZ, below that can be all of the manufacturers that you work with. Below that is your entire team, right? And within that team, you can highlight your installers, your project managers, your shipping department, the people that are putting in the extra hours, right? Who's on site right now? It's probably your shipping department. They've been on site, man. The return to office, does that not include the people in accounts, that are working on the docks to bring product in and out? They've been back. Give them some credit. Use social media to do it, and do it in a fun way. Show who is working on the forklifts and how you're haven't had an issue, with your shipping is things coming in, things going out, and you guys have this down to a science. Right. Okay. So maybe that'll open up a conversation about products and the availability of products. But the fact is you're highlighting somebody who is putting in a lot of work to make it happen. Give them credit, make that part of your conversation. Maybe that's one way to look at it. Right. Or highlight the products you have on the shelves that are in. Social media is a great place to tell people that you have speakers in stock, displays in stock. In a time where all that is kind of tough to do, why not show it? Because having a graphic that says now in stock and it's a canned image of a microphone is one thing. Showing that you have 150 of them now on the shelves ready to go out with the UPS guy sitting in there waiting, that's a different emotion that could raise. Wow, those guys have 150 microphones that I need. I need 10 of those and I have been waiting. I want those. That may trigger a conversation. You don't know how that is going to impact. And I'll take my chances that will impact it on a positive, and then I'll move it out. That's, if the goal is sales and you want ROI, why don't you find a way to make social media an ROI? Because all it is a picture or a little video, and it's going to add to the bottom line. So
a lot of great content there, especially I think highlighting the team. I mean, our industry is filled with superstars, pun fully intended, and I think we should highlight those superstars.
Absolutely.
So you talked about ROI at the close of that answer. Can you give me a sense of the best way to assess the successfulness or the ROI of a company, an Integrators campaign to build their brand and gain social media influence? I know you said there can be some risks with 3-month plans and 6-month plans. It's important to take it slow and not come too hot out of the gate. But if you don't see some kind of tangible result after, say, 6 months, should you conclude you failed and try something different?
Well, so let's put this in a way that a lot of people should understand. Social media doesn't cost a lot of money. As a matter of fact, it costs you $0 to post good morning every day. It costs you $0 to have your staff spend 5 minutes and wish everybody a, happy Flag Day, right? It doesn't take a lot to do that. As a matter of fact, you can pre-program that at lunchtime, and you can have all that go off automatically across all the social, personal social channels that are available. So let's talk about first that it doesn't really cost you a lot. The flip side to that is anybody who's going to come to you and say, just do it on social because it will be free. Well, it's free to an extent. Free in that, I can tell you that a post that has a picture or a graphic will get you better looks. It'll be opened more than it would be, say, just a post that says good morning.
Mhm.
But if you take a picture of your coffee cup, similar to what happened with AV and AM 4 years ago, it can go a little further. Now, I can do that as a brand or as a company. Maybe that coffee cup should be one of your own coffee cups, because now it's a picture of Integrator XYZ on the coffee cup. And now you're double reinforcing good morning because there is your logo on that coffee cup. So now maybe you have to buy a coffee cup. Does that hurt you? Does that not help? You know, there's people that will argue that I'm not going to get coffee cups made just to have people take picture. Okay. How many people have worn swag or shown swag off on pictures? And then the other people have the curiosity of that. Is there tangible ROIs? Fact is, it's tough, right? You can look at impressions, you can look at click rates. Now, let's talk in a way that most marketers would understand. Real marketers, because I don't consider myself a real marketer. If you want, Dan, after this call, we can have a conversation about real journalists versus bloggers. That's always a fun one too, because I'm not a real journalist. I've blogged, but that's about it. But real marketers understand open rates on email. It's tangible, right? How can they measure if something was good? Well, if you send out an email and your email open rate is super low, that sucks. You will not send that style email again. But if you post a picture on LinkedIn and say good morning, and you get 1,500 views, how do you put a dollar sign behind that?
Mhm.
Brand awareness, that did more than your email did, just because you targeted it to your customers that nobody opened. So I have my own personal issues with how to develop an ROI, because I look at impressions and open and views on social and can go back to a failed email that you targeted 5,000 people and only X opened it. And what did they really do when they opened it? Right. So did it create a conversation? Did it lead to a direct message like, hey, where'd you get that coffee cup? I'd love to get one of those. Right.
Mhm.
That's where things get smart. That's where when manufacturers will send me a cup and I send that picture out of a coffee cup that I received from brand X. And I said, thank you so-and-so for sending me this cool coffee mug. I'm making sure that I'll fill it, with extra caffeine this morning. Next thing you know, there's like, where do I get one? And then they're getting tagged and going, hey, brand X, where's my coffee mug? Right? I love your product. And now you're getting testimonials from a coffee cup. Yeah, it's hard to say what the ROI is in a monetary thing, but from a brand awareness, you cannot argue that social media does not help with brand awareness. And with personal branding, right? As long as you can build up your street credibility, right? You are a known, audio specialist in the industry, and you want to do product reviews on microphones and speakers, you got the background to do it. Why not? What makes it good? If you're okay with that, and your company is okay with that, you can have a whole series. We employ two top-end engineers, or actually more than two top-end engineers, but two famous engineers within Starin, right? We created a little series that was called The Lost Art of AV. And what it was not even anything brand centric. It was just talking about tips and tricks and refreshers for things for people that were kind of up and coming or needed to understand how to do Ohm's law for CTS, right? Or a better way to build a rack and to separate the power so that there was no power bleeding into other wires, right? Proper way to build a rack, and going back and tagging Avixa and Infocom and NSCA and all the different organizations that are out there and saying, listen, if you want the true book of if you want to read the standards, read them here. But here's a picture, here's a graphic. This is the best way to do it,
Mhm.
right? You have these people in-house. All it does is, what is it? An afternoon with somebody with a camera filming how they would do it. We didn't even film them. We actually just had some graphics, and they did the voiceovers where they spoke about the proper way to build a rack, or explained Ohm's law, or what 70-volt speakers were compared to other. And some of our biggest, most watched videos are those how-to videos. You have this great staff. Why don't you, again, you're highlighting them, you're highlighting technology. You want to put in a brand there? man, talk to the brand. I'm sure the brand would even send you some sort of educational setup that they use in-house to help you explain how speakers are made. You never know, but you're never going to know if you don't take that chance. And that's where people get kind of caught up with the ROI. So it costs you $50 to have something shipped over. Big deal. How is it going to help you when you're helping your customers?
It's a very valid point. It's a very valid point. I think sometimes people do get caught up in some kind of a quantifiable or monetary ROI, and they're not necessarily thinking about the bigger picture like that. Just to kind of tie up this podcast and close it out, can you draw on maybe 2 or 3 resources that integrators might turn to if they're looking to either, start building their brand online, or if they've encountered roadblocks, they've encountered questions along the way, something that they can use as their key go-to resource other than reaching out to you on Instagram or on Twitter?
Well, that is always an open thing. I am on the social medias all day, so I can definitely help anytime. But yes, when I first started doing this, I explored how to. I'm cautious, right? Though today, I don't know the perception that you may think of how I tweet on a daily basis, but when I first started, I did not just want to put anything out there. I was super cautious. I have my own rules of what I use on Twitter and on social platforms, of things that I do not want to talk about, things that I'd rather stay away from, and how I wanted to build my online persona. It very much mimics what I am in person, with the exception of I'm definitely a lot more less opinionated because I'm a question person, right? I've kind of developed that persona online where I ask a lot of questions, and it turned into a whole Sunday thing and a Navy challenge, right? So the resources that are out there, I read about Twitter, how to tweet, just simple books that I picked up even at a Barnes and Noble, right? I needed to find out. But every book that I went to on how to tweet all kind of talked about branding and personal branding. I'm not a marketer. I wasn't a marketer then, so I had to figure out what that meant. So that led me down a road, and one thing leads to another. And I'm a reader, so it kind of like set me on a journey. How to tweet sent me into personal branding. Personal branding then sent me into the different platforms and how the different platforms work. What is branding? How do you want to establish yourself, right? Even my Twitter handle, where I use my real name as opposed to a pseudonym, right? Because I am Chris Neto, not the Chris Neto from the Australian guitarist that has the same handle, but Chris_Neto is me. And there was always a question: do I use a do I use a nickname? How is it going to be related to AV? But it was going to be me with the purpose of doing AV. So I'm going to go with my name. There was never that was never in question. So then it started, got me into conversations about, or reading and looking into fandom, because essentially that's what I am, right? I'm a super fan of AV. I love this stuff. You have to have a passion. I am an extreme example of social media to a lot of folks because I live it and I breathe it, right? I do it on Sundays, right? I asked a question last night. People think we're crazy on AV in the AM. It was post AV in the AM. I asked, what time does everybody open up their Outlook? Do you look at your Outlook on Sundays? And some people are like vehemently like, no, there's no way. And I'm like, well, around 8 o'clock when I sit down on Sundays is when I check my calendar just to make sure I have nothing sneaking up pre 9 o'clock that could surprise me on a Monday morning. But I figured, look, I'm sure everybody opens up their Outlook at a certain time. So that's how I use social. But learning how to use all that and how I developed a community within AV and the AM all came from books. So if people are interested in some great books that I've used along the way, one book that I use is Seth Godin's Tribes. I think it's great. It was a big influence on how I kind of went down and kind of helped AV and the AM form, I guess, in its early days, because it was just random conversations and then kind of build the community and how to do that. So Seth Godin's Tribes was a great one. A gentleman, author, and a digital, I guess, a superstar by the name of Pat Flynn, who has been involved in the world of social media for many years. He wrote a book called Superfans. Superfans is great because it's how to curate, the audience, right? How do you build that audience and how do you keep an audience engaged? From that, obviously, the Gary Vaynerchuks of the world, that was my big highlight of 2019 going into 2020, was when Gary Vaynerchuk followed me, which blew me away. But his books, Crushing It, and his latest one, which is 12 and a half, which I'm in the middle of reading right now. But one of my favorite books is not so much a social media book or how-to book, but is a book that I love. By a gentleman by the name of Jonah Berger, Ivy Leaguer, right? Kind of a professor at an Ivy League, wrote a book called Contagious: Why Things Catch On. I love that book because you can look at that and read the story of how iPod became, the iPhone became a must-have gadget to the point where people are sleeping outside a store, right? How do we bring that into our world of AV? How do we make something so I must have it? How do you make a something that is FOMO or fear of missing out? Love that book. A lot of little stories that I've used in that book to kind of translate how to use it in the world of AV. And then in those books, the one thing I learned outside of this, one of the beautiful parts of social is who you become friends with using social. And one of the people that I connected with was a Food Network chef. He used to appear on Guy's grocery games, and we connected online, and we used to message. He was from Jersey. Unfortunately, he passed away. But one of the things that he taught me was the infamous pineapple on pizza thing. So I will make a comment online, and people are going to wonder how this applies to AV. He said, Chris, there's a couple things that I know. I'm a chef, but if I ever tell anybody that I'm going to put pineapple on pizza, people go nuts. I said, come on, man. How is that even possible? He goes, because I'm a chef. And if I talk about doing that, people have strong opinions. And then I finally figured out how that worked. Because if I went to you, Dan, and said, hey, Dan, I hate my Bugatti, you'd look at me and go, what? I don't have a Bugatti. I've never been a Bugatti. I never drove in a Bugatti. I've never tasted Bugatti, right? That's the point. The point is, how many people actually ride in a Bugatti or own a Bugatti or even have a picture of one, right, in real life? But pineapple and pizza is something that somebody can go down the street to, and for less than $5, you buy a slice, you have the pineapple put on, and you come up with an opinion. You can quickly form an opinion,
Right.
and you either hate it or you like it. The world of social media, sometimes it's all about engaging. And that's what my buddy Carl taught me. And if you need to get people talking, you just kind of push them into a conversation that you can have. So ask them something like about pineapple on pizza. Everybody has an opinion on it, because for $5 or less, you can go down to a corner store and you're going to love it or hate it. Not that I hate pineapple on pizza. Maybe I'm revealing a little bit too much, but that's the truth. Is that the whole thing, in the same vein, and how I learned social media, is that everybody that's on social right now, we're all connected to the wonderful world of AV. We all like our professional AV, and we even like the residential side of the business, right? And they're even within our own industry, that's two separate things. But you find that common thread, that flat ground in the world of AV. Mark Coxon learned it. Why do you think he tells people he hates HDMI? Strong opinions on whether it's good or bad, locking connector versus non-locking connector. So that is just little bits of strategy you pick up along the way in the world of life, man. That's just the way it works. So I hope those books help, kind of craft who you are, maybe on a personal side or personal brand. But you can take that and translate a lot of those things and how they apply to a business, small company. SMBs, the wonderful thing about being an SMB in the world of AV is that you can take risk. And I encourage you all to take safe risk or calculated risks with these things. You're not going to jail. You're not going to go to jail for putting out that, you like HDMI. You're not. So see what people will say. Tell people that you like a brand. Tell people that you like a style of wiring over another. If it goes against the Avixa standard, get ready, because then you can defend why you think it should be that. It's all opinions. Some of it is fact. Some of it is just people looking for attention. But if you come with a good argument, people love to debate online. Maybe that's something you guys want to do. That's up to you guys. But take a look at the books, make some rules that you guys, that as integrators, you don't want to go in and talk about things you want to stay away from. The rest is in putting some trust into your employees that they can do it. A little bit of training and working with a marketing company that's willing to help. You guys can all be stars. It's not that hard, but it does take patience, and it will not happen overnight. So please have that included into your plans.
So I think those book resources will be tremendously helpful to our audience. And I also think this half-hour plus conversation was full of gems and nuggets that they'll be able to draw on. So thank you so much, Chris, for taking the time to share your insights and your experience. Again, so happy to have been joined by Chris Neto, who is not only the AV and the AM impresario, but also market development manager for Starin, a Midwich company. Thanks again for joining me. Really appreciate you taking time to be on the AV Plus podcast.
Anytime. Thanks a lot.